It's good to see everybody here this morning. We have our biggest crowd for Sunday school of the pandemic era.
Right.
Okay, I don't know any other way to say it, but of the pandemic era, this is our biggest crowd, I think, and we're glad to see all of you here. And we see a lot of people wearing a mask, which I think is really good. It's hard for me to talk wearing one, but I'm trying to stay away from everybody and wearing one. But I will tell you that I wear one every time I go in a store, every time I go anywhere like that. So thank you for doing that, and stay safe as you can. And it's sort of scary, you know. I saw where we were just talking about the church that had the revival. I saw the story where 40 of them came down with corona after the revival. Okay, so, you know, we talked about last week not singing, you know, because it spreads it more. And I thought to myself, well, I don't know. And so we decided not to. And then I got to thinking after I saw that, hey, that may be a great thing. You know, we just don't know, guys. We're in a time where we just don't know. And I think any precaution we can take that might keep our church safe is good. And
well, if you don't wear them, consider they may tell you you're going to stop going to church.
yeah, that's I think one of the things that promoted people to start wearing them was the thought not only of closing church, but college football is, you know, people are like, hey, I'll wear a mask, it means we can have college football. I've heard people actually say that. I wasn't one of them, but I may have thought that. If you go out and look on my truck before you leave, it looks, all we need is Granny sitting up there, and we have the Beverly Hillbillies. We are going to Florida, me and Dina and her two kids that are home from the Air Force, one from Idaho and one from Nevada, and his wife, we lovingly call J-Dole. Okay, she doesn't particularly like that nickname at all. And so I loaded up with bikes and kayaks and beats, and they put me all the stuff to carry in that truck. It looks like a Beverly Hills. Praise the Lord. The air conditioner is fixed and working, and thank the Lord for that. And
You'll
so
be back Sunday?
I will be back. Listen, if I had to be down there a week, that y'all would hear of a murder-suicide in Florida. Okay, so keep in mind, yes, Thursday. But so good to see everybody. This is really a good crowd. And guys, continue to pray for our church during this time. You know, it's just a weird thing to me. And I told you, I've been struggling, you know, because we were just so hot when this pandemic struck. I mean, we were hot. 86 and 85 in church and attendance. But you know, even during this time, we've added Vanessa and her two grandkids. Okay, I thought they were her kids. I rode his bike.
No, I didn't. I stopped riding my bike.
From the house. He's got a bike, and here's a baseball glove, and we're just looking forward to a wonderful children tennis racket. You know, one of these days you need to come and prepare like a meal, like those Chinese meals, for everything. But it's good to see you back here today. If you got a chance to read the lesson, some of you, it was really good. It sort of changed gears from what we've been talking about, wisdom, and it's on pleasing God. A couple of prayer requests too. Remember, today is Miss Barnett's birthday. She's 87, and Wendy has brought Wendy a little cake. And I was blessed enough to go by and talk to her Tuesday and actually stayed a lot longer than I intended to stay. So I ended up cutting grass, but I'll tell you, I got a little story that goes with that later. Christy knows about, but I'll share it with y'all. It's sort of funny what happened. But Al said that she got a ton of cards. Because I asked her, was it okay to put her address on Facebook? You know, so that, because she doesn't do Facebook. You know, any innovation, Edwin, after 1960, you know, she thinks is evil.
But if anybody would like to do a video, Denise or Al can show it to her. I can say, you know, you're welcome to do that if you haven't sent a card or you want to tell her happy birthday.
All right, and I was there, hospice came in, and Al was saying something about oxygen. Al, you want to talk to her about the oxygen and stuff, what they've done?
She just wears it for a time. It makes her feel better.
Yeah.
She wears it.
Well, we mailed our card to Al's address. Did you get it?
Yeah, I'm taking her today.
Okay.
She got a bunch of, mail yesterday, and she finally, let's see, Dad will be passed away August 13th. She finally got her refund check from the nursing home
Wow.
after 4 months.
Well, I have her a cake, so don't leave church.
Yeah, don't leave church without it. That's why I told him that you were doing that. That was so sweet. Okay, so we're, any other prayer requests? We
Yes.
mentioned them again in a minute, but go ahead.
My grandbaby, Bella,
Bella?
has got to have surgery. She broke her collarbone riding her bicycle, and it is a very bad break, and we find
Oh,
out
my
tomorrow when they're gonna do it.
Now see, if Miss Barnett was here, I would say, don't mention she did it on a bicycle, because she won't want to have to ride this bicycle, even though he's in his 50s now. But when a man breaks his leg on a little 5-year-old scooter, you know, what damage could he do on a bicycle? He might wipe out a whole community. But anyway,
Remember Daddy, because he's
yeah,
supposed to
doing
come home
much better.
tomorrow.
He's
He's supposed to come
home
tomorrow, yeah.
Remember Gary McGrady, who had double knee replacement surgery. And remember our schools. Now, what's the situation for y'all in school? Nobody knows.
Well, right now, so you have either online or a hybrid option. More than likely, the whole 9 program is going to be online, so we're expecting.
I saw where somebody had said something about online classes, but we still having football, and it was Panther and back and forth. I think it was Marissa, Tim Moncrief and Marissa Woodford. We're going back and forth about debating that, and so just real quick.
Jennifer's dad's having his kidney removed Friday.
All right, Jennifer's dad's having his kidney removed Friday to Mr. Limbaugh. Katie?
Remember Jeff, he's at the hospital now, he had to go this morning, hurting real bad, and it only had appendicitis. But he texted me on the way to church and said they said it was a gallbladder, but he had a stone runner in a gut or something. So I got surgery Thursday, if he can hold it out for
Oh my God.
All right, remember Katie and Hudson's son Jeff? You know, gallbladder surgery, when my father-in-law had it, they basically took the organs out, took it out, and set them all back in. But I think now they can do a much greater
They
procedure.
kind of suck it out, man.
They do it laparoscopic.
Yeah, back then they literally opened him up and just had to, that's why he was so sore. Okay, we'll do prayer requests again. We may have some more come in and have some others, but it's good to see you. The lesson is on pleasing God. It said God's people should seek to please Him in their attitudes and actions. The first sentence says, and I'm glad we've got some children here, it says, children enjoy pleasing the people they love. Is that true, Tanner? Children? Ethan? Okay? Do y'all enjoy making people happy that you love? Do you like doing things for them? It mentions things, I thought this, it mentioned the parents, grandparents, teachers at school, neighbors across the street, give them a hug, a kiss, or a smile. Don't give them a hug or a kiss at school. Man, I told you about that when you were in school. Okay? You didn't listen. Okay? It mentions some things that how to do. And we can do things that are pleasing to God as well. And you think about it, you probably did something this week that was pleasing to God. And you may not even have been aware of it. If it was a kind word you said to somebody, like Al talked about this children's church where with the little kids, like if you just maybe find somebody that doesn't, I remember a Lucy episode, you'll remember this one with me, I know. She was, got in with this group called the Friends of the Friendless.
It's her birthday.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the Salvation Army.
Yeah, the Salvation Army. And so, you know, it's those kind of things that please God. Okay? I mean, everybody likes to go around people that are popular and do those kind of things, but go out of your way to be nice to somebody that's in that situation. And so, if you look over on page 74, we've been talking about wisdom and how Solomon stressed the wisdom of God in the beginning of having a blessed life was wisdom of God. And he said the wisdom Solomon called God's people, this is the second paragraph on page 74, was fully revealed and embodied in the person and work of Jesus Christ, the gospel of Jesus, the power of God, and the wisdom of God. To know Jesus is to know the wisdom of God that changes how we think and act. You know, that's so important. That's what Solomon was talking about. That knowing Christ is to know wisdom, is to know love, is to know mercy and kindness. And it sort of goes along. Al and I talked this week, and we marveled at how the children's sermon and our sermon, or that we try to preach, lined up and just sort of hit with some things. And there were some things in here that will go in our message today. And I underlined this. It said, one of the mistakes we often make when thinking about the wisdom of God is to separate the pursuit of wisdom from God himself, as if the wisdom of God was distinct from the person of God. To pursue God's wisdom means to pursue God himself. It's not, a lot of people have head knowledge of God, and they can tell you scripture and those kind of things. Other people have heart knowledge of God. And so by knowing more and more about God, you're able to live more and more for God, pleasing to him. And so if we'll look at this forward in the text there, I made a few points there that he made. So we'll just look at the scriptures real quick. Okay? If you look at the Bible, anybody want to read those? The Bible 74:33. Read those two.
The fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility. And verse 8, better is a little with righteousness than great revenues without right.
I like that. Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues without right. If you look at the top of page 75, it said, Solomon called his readers to please God by pursuing and applying wisdom, coupled with two basic reminders. First, the basis for the pursuit of God's wisdom is the fear of the Lord. And the fear of the Lord means respect and honoring his word. It said it's viewed as a teacher. It teaches wisdom. Secondly, the pursuit of God's wise counsel humbles the believer. He reminded God's people that the pursuit of godly wisdom, they were to demonstrate humility. People often misunderstand humility and meekness as Jesus talked about it. He's not talking about this picture of a dog that you raise your hand to go to pet and he just crumbles down and just literally falls over. It's not talking about that type of humility and meekness. But humility is just a spirit of thankfulness and a realization of where you are without Christ. And I just made that up. That's pretty deep for somebody that got run over by a car. Okay, and I wrote this down. You see, I made some points, so I did study the lesson. I want you to know that. Said Solomon declared that humbly revering God is more valuable than great wealth. He contrasted ill-gotten wealth with the value of true righteousness. How did I hate guys? And I love this statement. Material wealth is neutral.
Is what?
Neutral.
Material wealth is neutral.
Neutral. What does it mean, Ethan, if your car is in neutral? It's not going forward or backwards. Neutral means they're neither good nor bad. They're not taking sides. There were people in the Civil War, for example, that were neutral. Didn't favor the North or the South. There are even people, believe it or not, in the Auburn-Alabama rivalry that are neutral. Not many, because most people, if you went and watched a football game between two teams, if you were dropped in the middle of Montana and was watching a football game between two teams, believe it or not, if you sit there and watch that game, you'd end up pulling for one team or the other. And you don't know anybody on either team, but there may be somebody or something that appealed to you, maybe even the color of their uniform. Or maybe you see a good-looking guy, maybe, on one team or the other.
Or the quarterback for one team's mother got,
Yeah, it's something. You'll end up pulling. It's hard to remain neutral. Solomon is saying, listen, having material wealth, a lot of money, these kind of things, is neutral. It's not good nor bad. But how a person obtained it and what they do with it determines whether it's good or bad. Okay? If you obtain that honestly through hard work and God's blessings, don't miss that. Okay? And you use that to help other people with, okay, then that is a very, very good thing. Okay, look at the bottom. I like verse number 1 at the bottom of 75. Would somebody read that one? I'll read it. The preparations of the heart of man and the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. I like that. If you'll turn over to 76, there's a commentary on that. True wisdom calls for accountability. Do you remember me saying this in the sermon last week? That we will be judged. Paul tells us. Now, those things I said last week, some of them may have been sort of foreign to you because they were foreign to me as I prepared that lesson and read things. I was like, I've read this 100 times but never knew what it was talking about. But I like one of the things that says that God will judge us based on the basis of what we knew. And you say, well, can you back that up with any scripture? Well, yes, I can. It says, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. It's whether it's sin or not is based on what you knew. Yeah. And here he's saying that wisdom calls for accountability. The more you know, the more accountable that you are. With great
Knowledge.
comes
Wendy? Great responsibility.
with great power, great knowledge, comes great responsibility. And that's what Paul was writing in Romans, that the more you know, and the more you should know, the more you have the opportunity to know, the more you will be judged upon that. Okay? And so that's what he's writing here, is what he's saying here. It's strange, he said, whether or not we understand this, and let me explain to you what I mean by this, that he is sovereign and we're responsible at the same time. God is sovereign. Sovereign means you have all power. In government, when we talk about popular sovereignty, you remember that term, anybody? Popular sovereignty? It means, popular means people, sovereignty means power. It means the power comes from the people. What he's saying here is that God is sovereign, but that we're responsible. Because of a two-word phrase, FW.
Free will.
Free will. Free will.
We have a choice.
We have a choice. We're not robots. When God put Adam and Eve in the garden, they had a choice. God gave them a choice. They could live there forever and have it made, or they could go and do what he told them not to do. Think about that. He didn't give them a long list of do's and don'ts, did he? It was basically just don't eat of that tree. Do you see why? I've often thought, well, why did God just not put that tree there? Then they wouldn't have a choice. Everything they did would be okay. But God had to allow people to have a choice. And he allows people to have a choice today. You can accept him or you can reject him. In our sermon next week, and I've already started, believe it or not, working on a sermon for next week, there's a point that comes out that it's not that God divides the world into two groups. And he doesn't divide it racially or economically or whatever. It talks about how he divides it, into those that accept and those that reject. Okay? And we'll say more about that. I don't want to spoil it because you might think, well, there's no need in coming. I've already heard next week's message. Okay? We'll hold on to that. And he goes on to say, I like this at the bottom. It says, in the end, all people are accountable for their responses to God. And listen to this. It says, God had already determined to offer up Jesus as a sacrifice for sinners before time began. Yet those who killed Jesus, all of us, will be held accountable. This means that the cross was not plan B. His plan from before the foundation of the world was to save repentant sinners from the penalty of sin by means of the cross. Do you remember me saying this in the sermon? And I know it's hard to remember everything I say so much and say it so quickly and so maybe cloudy at times. But remember me saying that blank was God's greatest work? Redemption was God's greatest work. Because to create the world, and I read this somewhere, I didn't come up on my own. To create the world, all he needed was his power. But in order to provide redemption, he had to have love and grace and mercy and justice and other things. So redemption was God's greatest work. And I love what I read that somebody said, and I quoted it in my message. I said, it can be said that God created in order to redeem. And I'm going to tell you, that is a powerful statement. God created in order to redeem. Because he knew when he created man and gave him free choice, he knew that the choice that man would make would be bad, and he would need a Savior. See, what we misunderstand sometimes, and I'm right there with those that maybe you got it. You know, it was almost like God created this perfect world, and oh crap, somebody sinned. I said crap in church. Okay, where's that jar? Okay, but anyway, you know what I'm saying. Oh no, they've sinned, and God said, now I've got to come up with a plan. I've got to come up with something because of sin. No, he knew before he ever created, okay, that redemption would be necessary. Does that make sense? Okay? He goes on to talk about we're responsible. On page 77, it lists those things that God hates. And I noticed it was interesting. It starts at the top and goes to the bottom. See if you've got any of these. Now, all of us have some of these. Some of us have all of these at times, at one time or another. Arrogant eyes, a lying tongue. I'm going to mention something in the message about that lying tongue, so I'll hold off on that, but I've got a good story to go with that. Hands that shed innocent blood. And that does not necessarily mean murder. You know, if you punch somebody for no reason, must break their nose or give them a bloody nose, you know, that's innocent blood if they were innocent. Now, if they were attacking somebody or needed punching, you know, that's a little different. A heart that plots wicked schemes, feet eager to run to evil. I can't wait to get there. You know, just I can't wait to go and do this, or I can't wait to do, you know, I'm looking forward to this evil. I'm running to it. Okay? A false witness. Okay? And you know, we've all seen this where somebody testified in court about something they said, oh, just lied. That's what he's talking about. And one who stirs up trouble. Okay? He says, you know, that, you know, if you stir up trouble, he said, among the brothers, it mentions there. And so he goes on, at the bottom of that page, it said, he, meaning God, determines our steps because he alone can see the path from beginning to end, yet he does so without infringing on our liberty or erasing our responsibility for the steps we choose. We have free will. I've heard people say that Judas had no choice in betraying Christ. You agree with that? No, he had a choice.
He had a choice.
Now, God knew what he was going to choose, but he had a choice. After committing that sin, Judas again has a choice. Listen, he could have fallen on his knees. I am so sorry, God. I am sorry for what I've done. Please forgive me. God would forgive me in a heartbeat. Matter of fact, God would want him to do it and hope that he would do it. To say that God didn't want him to do that is to say that the sin that he committed was greater than God's grace. And there's no way that that can be. See? And so, but God gives us free will, but he knows what we're going to pick. And I've used the analogy a million times of the little candy bars we used to get trick-or-treat, the little Hershey bars, okay? And the little other kind of, let's say you get the Hershey's with almonds and without. I remember one year, Katie, one of y'all gave me some of those for Christmas. You don't remember? One of you gave me the little gold ones and the little silver ones, the one that had the nuts in it, one of you didn't. One of you gave it to me for Christmas, I think, or somebody did. Anyway, if I lay these two here, I'm going to eat both of them. I can eat them any way I want to, whichever one I want first. Okay? I decide, but God already knows. Now that is simple as can be, but I think it shows what happened. Okay, Judas, okay, betray Jesus or not, I'm going to betray him. Ask for forgiveness or not, I'm not going to ask. See? I mean, God knows, but we have the choice. And I think that's where some people get confused on the thinking that, well, some people are born and can't be saved, and others are born and can't be lost. You know, because because God knows that He's determined. Here's the lost, here's the saved list. Your name's on there. Because of what you choose. Here's the ones that ate the non-almonds first, here's the ones that ate the almonds first. But you make that choice. Your name may be listed here on those that are lost. As soon as you make that decision to trust Christ, your name goes on the other list. You see? Can the future be changed? Absolutely.
Yes.
Did not God promise Nineveh He was going to destroy that city? What happened? They repented, confessed, and God changed His mind. God told the king, what's his name? That's a good preacher. King, what's his name? That he was going to die. You remember what happened? He prayed, and God said, I'm going to give you 15 more years. You can change the mind of God. It can be changed. Now, God Himself doesn't change, and His principles doesn't change, and those type of things. But in those type of things, it can happen because of free will. All right? Go over to page 76 and 78 and 79 as we wrap it up. Got the time there, Doctor? Okay?
10:47.
Okay, we're good. We got about 3 or 4 minutes left. I wrote this in here. It said, even a right deed can be done out of the wrong motivation. Even a right deed can be done out of the wrong motivation. Okay. Somebody gives a large amount of money to the church. That's a good deed. But if they gave it so that people in the community would worship them, look upon them, you know, then they've done a good deed, but they've done it for the wrong reason. They did it for the wrong reason. We had a man in church one time at 6th Street that hardly ever missed church, and somebody said he joined the choir, and they said, and they said the only reason he joined the choir is so he could look out and see who was there, so when church was over, he could try to sell them a used car. I mean, that's good that you're attending church, but the motivation, you know, is not a good thing, okay, necessarily. Okay, and I wrote that note down when it came to me this week when I was reading the lesson. It says, it is obvious when evil deeds are done out of a sinful heart. You know, that's pretty obvious. You can tell those. What is not so obvious to us is when our motivations for doing what is good are not God honoring. It's the why we did something. It's the why we did something. But down at the bottom, it said anyone who wanted to please the Lord would share God's concern for honesty. And he talked about how they were supposed to be honest in their dealings. And it reminded me of the story of the woman that went in to buy a chicken. Have you ever heard that story? Back in the day when we used to sell the chickens, you know, the butcher counter, she went in and she said, I got some company coming, I need a chicken. So he reached down in the barrel of the ice and whatever and reached around. There was only one chicken in there. And he brought the chicken up and he said, here's the chicken. And she said, well, how much does it weigh? And he said, he weighed it and it was like 3 pounds, 4 ounces. Okay, maybe it was a hen. Okay, but anyway, she said, well, I need a little bit of it. You have a little bit of it. And so he said, yeah. So he stuck it back there and wiggled it around in the ice and came back, put it on the scale, put his thumb on it, and said, this one's 4 pounds, 1 ounce. And she said, well, a lot of people are coming, you better let me have both of them. Okay? And so he's in trouble now because of his dishonesty. And so that's what Solomon was saying here, that we need to be honest in how we deal with people, that type of thing. And then finally, the last thing on page 80, it's verse 7 says, when a man's ways please the Lord, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. Did you hear that? How powerful is that? When a man's ways please the Lord. In other words, when you are pleasing to the Lord, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. You know, have you ever heard some people that's an enemy, whether it's a sports game or something else, say, you know, he may be our enemy, he may be on the other side, but I respect him. You ever heard that being said? I have a lot of respect for him. You know, he is our enemy, but he is an honorable foe. Have you ever heard that? That's what he's talking about here. Even his enemies will be at peace with him. It said living for God does not mean things always turn out the way the world defines success. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to get, and I like to use this example, that best parking place in front of Walmart. Funny enough, we went somewhere yesterday, we were getting ready for this trip to Florida, and Dina has rented a van because there's so many people going, okay? There's like 7 or 8 going. I'm going by myself in the truck, praise God, okay? But Dina and her mother and her 2 sons and his wife and their little girl and perhaps maybe even Gordon, okay? That's Judy's husband. They came to church with him. He may be going, we don't know. And they
They are on a real low floor, aren't you?
yeah, if we get up too high, it'd be too tempting, just a little bit. But yesterday, we had to go pick it up, and then we had to stop by Walmart and get some stuff, and somebody pulled out and left me, and they just said, there's the pastor parking place, you know, because they're always talking about that, I make that joke a lot. But things don't always turn out because we live that way. But, you know, if you will live such a way that's pleasing and honoring to God. So remember those things, okay? Seek to please God in what you do. Everybody's accountable to God. It comes from having a right relationship with Him. He will guide your deeds and your actions. And God's blessings on those please Him are seen in Him, giving stability, rescue from sin, peaceful relations with others. And it says in Scripture, even your enemies